Now, there have been a recent rash of bomb threats against Jewish community schools and community centers. Now, last night, Donald Trump in his speech did address that, and he condemned those, as he should. However, one of his surrogates, a man named Anthony Scaramucci, has some different thoughts about this. Instead of going out and completely condemning these, he's actually saying, well, hey, man, yeah, they're not great, but, you know, we don't know if it's white supremacists. It could be the Democrats that are out there doing this. Yes, he actually thinks that Democrats are calling in these bomb threats to make Donald Trump look bad. Now, this was in The Intercept. Now, Scaramucci, who did fundraise for the Trump campaign and joined his transition team and had even been running for a senior role in the White House, recently took to Twitter on Tuesday to imply that some of these threats against these Jewish centers, these bomb threats, are coming from liberals. He tweeted, "It's not yet clear who the JCC offenders are, but don't forget that the Democrats' effort to incite violence at Trump rallies." Well, now wait a minute here. Oh, he's saying that Democrats incited violence at Trump rallies. Now, there are a lot of Democratic protesters that ended up getting thrown out, beaten up by some Trump supporters. There's video of that. It's been highly documented. Now, his whole evidence of this is from James O'Keefe. Now, James O'Keefe is a guy who's been caught heavily editing sting videos. So any evidence that he comes out with, well, it needs to be looked at. Even if it is true, it needs to be looked at with a grain of salt, or maybe a lot of salt. Because again, he's been known to selectively edit his videos to come out with whatever conclusion that he went into the video with. So this is not somebody who should actually trust. Now, here's the funny thing, right? After these sting videos, some of these, the Democrats, probably because they're fucking weak, have fired people related to these videos, even if they didn't do anything wrong. You had Planned Parenthood. Somebody at Planned Parenthood, and this was a different sting video, not done by James O'Keefe, but another place that actually got in trouble for doing these edit videos. People at Planned Parenthood still fired this person, even though she did nothing wrong. She did absolutely nothing wrong. So this is how weak the Democrats are. Oh no, if there's any hint of controversy, we have to immediately fire someone. But wait, what do we know these videos are legit? Because again, this guy has a history of selectively editing these videos. So anyway, now that's sort of the evidence that Scaramucci uses to push the possibility that Democrats have been perpetrating bomb threats in order to make Trump look bad. Now look, when called out on this on Twitter, Scaramucci said, no, I'm just saying that until we know for sure, it's highly irresponsible to jump to any conclusions. Well, look, you're right. Except that you're also possibly jumping to conclusions. Now, we don't know who's doing this. In fact, nobody here is saying that it's got to be Trump supporters. No, of course not. Is it possible? Sure. Is it possible that it could be Democrats? It could be. That's why we investigate this whole thing. That's why we go and actually try to find out the facts. And if it is some left-wingers, which I highly doubt, then we point them out and we condemn them. And then they get in trouble. We let the law do its thing. Because you don't do that. And by the way, his first tweet referred to people staging protests at Trump rallies. So how is that close to calling bomb threats against Jewish centers? That's not even close, dude. That's a huge, huge leap. Come on, man. And look, aside from last night, you got to notice that the Trump administration has been a little tepid on challenging hate crimes from the far-right fringes. It should be really easy to call them out, even if they're right-wing hate crimes. Left-wing doesn't have any problem calling them out. Because violence is violence. Crime is crime. You got to call it what it is. But when it comes from their side, they're really hesitant on pointing this out. Not only that, but Holocaust Remembrance Day. they weren't exactly, the Trump administration wasn't exactly forward about saying anything about it. They kind of left the Jews out. But that's the whole point of the Holocaust, is to point out what happened to the Jews. Just saying. For some reason, it seems to be just a little bit difficult for them to talk about this. And you can't deny that there hasn't been a wave of anti-immigrant, anti-Semitic, anti-LGBT attacks going in America since Trump began to run on some of his rhetoric. In fact, Z. Jelani of The Intercept notes that part of the strategy of the Trump administration has been to deny any links between Trump's rhetoric, far-right ideology, and the recent hate crimes. Now, let me give you some examples. Rick Santorum recently appeared on CNN to imply that without evidence that the wave of anti-Semitic hate crimes is actually coming from Muslims. No, it has nothing to do with our rhetoric against certain groups. No, what it is that it's the Muslims. It's always the Muslims. You got to blame the Muslims. It's kind of funny because when the Jewish cemeteries were attacked, who stepped in to help? The Muslims, the Muslim community. And actually, there was a huge fundraiser by Linda Sarsour. Sarsour raised a total of $140,000 within a week. That's enough to help the people fix up the cemetery. But no, it must be the Muslims. It's got to be the Muslims. It can't be anybody else. Sure. Until last night, the Trump administration hardly reacted to the recent shooting of an Indian man. Now, the shooter, of course, reportedly thought he was Iranian and yelled, according to witnesses, "Get out of my country." Gee, I don't know if that has anything to do with nationalist tones. When asked whether there was any link between the shooter's belief and Trump's rhetoric against Muslims, Sean Spicer replied, "Any loss of life were tragic, but I'm not going to get into that kind of... To suggest there's any correlation to Trump's rhetoric, I think it's a bit absurd." Spicer was also asked last week if Trump condemns Islamophobia in general, and he offered no comment, instead saying, "Hey, our administration is focused on going after radical Islam." Radical Islam. Now, he says if you want to come in here, or if you come here and want to express views that seek to do our country and our people harm, then he's going to fight it aggressively. And look, I agree with that. Now, he replied to a question about Islamophobia, so there's a big difference between preventing attacks and making sure that we keep this country safe so that there is no loss of life. But again, if everybody agrees, right or left, that if you try to come and harm Americans, that you don't belong here. Of course, we all agree with this. We all agree. The question, though, was about Islamophobia. Because there is certain rhetoric coming out of the right wing and the Trump administration that is anti-Muslim. And again, back to the point of the Jewish centers. Again, we don't know who called in the threats. But usually people who are against Jewish people tend to fall on the far right of the political spectrum. And that's something that is historic. The idea that Democrats would false flag this kind of stuff, look, to be honest to me, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's not like white supremacists have never threatened Jews before. It's kind of what they do. But what Scaramucci is essentially trying to do, in my opinion at least, and I could be wrong, is part projection. Well, yeah, we might do something like that. So I would assume that liberals might do it too. Again, that's what I think. I'm not necessarily right. I'm not saying that I'm 100% right. And also, look, they want to avoid offending the very small but fervent part of the base that helped these guys get into power. And they're counting on to help them win a second term. There is a very small, very vociferously racist group of people who support policies from Donald Trump. And we know that. And look, I could be wrong, right? Let's see where the facts come out on this. Because in some cases, like, for example, I covered the black church that was burnt down. Somebody wrote Trump on the side. Well, it turns out this was done by a black parishioner at that church to make Trump look bad. So look, with that established, and there are cases like that, we have to wait. We have to see where the facts lie before we can blame either the right or the left for these anti-Semitic attacks. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.